submit their questions through the chat function. And then Eric, Val, Leanne, and I will pose those questions to the guests. If you've got a more detailed question, we'll ask you to open up your mic, and then you can ask the question directly. As you may have just noticed, the call is being recorded. So if you do make a contribution to the session, please note that your contribution will be recorded, and we'll be posting this on YouTube, on CORA's YouTube. And by making a contribution, you're consenting to the posting of your contribution on the internet, and you won't get any compensation for that at all. So I'll I'll now hand it off to Leanne Stanley, who will provide a more detailed outline of what we'll be discussing today, and backgrounds for both Jill and Dave. Okay, over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Ron. Welcome, everybody. I know we had a race here in BC in Fort Langley this morning, so I know there's still people that are getting home from that, so might be watching this on the recording. But we wanted to get season 3 here of the CORA Off the Water series going without much further ado. And one of the things that we didn't get to last season was the hot topic of cruise selections. So right now we are in the midst of Team Canada already picking our cruise and going through cruise selections for 2023 World's Distance Championships for Samoa. We're already past our time trials and first OC6 evaluation. So we are in the midst of our cruise selections. But what we're focusing on today is looking at the club side of things in terms of club cruise selections and how do we do this, day to day in terms of picking who goes in what seat for practices. And then what do we do from the race side of things from a coach's standpoint. So we're so excited today to have some coaches from Southern California with us. We've got Dave Krueger, who you may have seen him all over Instagram with Culture Hot Sauce.
Hey!
Yeah, plug.
He is gardener extraordinaire. If you do get the chance, if you've ever seen his stuff, like I still I've got a collection going still of what I've got left over from what I picked up when I was last down at NAC. But Dave has done anything and everything down at Newport Aquatic Center, from coaching outrigger to dragon boat, rowing, like he's done it all, repairing boats. So he's going to share some insights from down there. We've also got Jill Schooler with us, who is the women's coach for Lanakila. And if you're on Instagram and you see anything from Danny Ching or Leah Ching, or any of the members of Lanakila, you'll see that they have like not just 1 or 2 boats out at practice, but they like have 12, 13, 14 boats, OC6s out at practice. So that in itself is a big undertaking. So looking forward to hearing from Jill about kind of what is going on in that side of things. So thank you so much, both Dave and Jill, for joining us today. And to kick it off, what we'd love to hear from you, I don't know if you guys did the rock, paper, scissors while I ran to grab the hot sauce from downstairs, but love to hear from you about just kind of a little background about you and your paddling and your clubs. And then, yeah, like what is your club? How are you guys running them? How do you figure out who sits where for practices? How do you figure out who sits where for crews? Like, let's jump right into the meat and potatoes. And we know that we're not going to solve all of the crew selection problems today, but we want to start the conversation for not just the people that are here, and for the people that are going to watch us online, but start that conversation. So one, the paddlers can get an idea of what goes in through a coach's mind when we're doing this, but also for our coaches that are online of what kind of things, maybe if we haven't thought about it, what kind of questions can we be asking ourselves? And if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, because Dave and Jill aren't going to talk forever, and I'm not going to talk forever, as contrary to it seems sometimes, I know. But we're going to open it up and take some of your questions here today too. So Dave or Jill, who wants to kick it off for us?
Okay, I'll go.
Right.
So yeah, initially I started as a rower in college, and then I ended up coaching at the Newport Aquatic Center for a year, and it wasn't until a couple of years later, so I started working at the front desk. Initially, I was an indoor rowing instructor for an Olympic gold and silver medalist who had a rowing studio. So rowing was my main thing. And I had started doing those rowing classes at NAC, and the outrigger coach saw I was a good athlete and tried to get me to paddle. But when he would ask me, he'd say, "Hey, come try facing forwards for once." And I would reply, "Why don't you use your legs, chicken legs?" And so it took a couple of years to get me out there. And of course, living in Costa Mesa and Newport Beach, I was surfing, every day, all the time. And if any of those days he walked by and said, "Hey, why don't you come surf with us?" I would have been like, what are you talking about? Because rowing's a flat water sport. And I had no idea that the outriggers, surfed wind waves. So I finally went out for a 6-man practice and went out in the ocean, caught a wave. I literally put my paddle over my lap, was like, "Why don't you tell me you surfed?" I've been hooked since. So, of course, in my first year, especially in my first year, I was blessed with some good opportunities. I did work my butt off, of course, because that's the kind of programs that I came from in rowing and stuff. But I ended up doing Molokai Ahoy my first year, ended up making a team for World Sprints, ended up then doing the first Olamau race, which was probably still one of the coolest races I've ever done, because we scored with having a storm. So sideways rain and big waves, in Hawaii, you can't beat that. And then after that, of course, it's a lot of different opportunities stemmed from that, from having, people like Johnny Puike as a coach, to having David Gerard, who is the longtime coach for Shelva'a, to working with guys on Paddling Connection, which is another Tahitian team. So I've had a lot of very good influences from a lot of coaches, and of course Billy Whitford over the years with his little philosophical sayings that make a difference. So I was blessed with all the opportunities. Ended up coaching men's and women's outrigger for many years, and of course, after Sam had passed, someone had to jump in. So I guess it ended up being me. And then doing dragon boating as well. And for me, it was I had never done it before, but I'd go to tryouts and I make teams. So sign me up, I'll do it. But I love it all. It's all really good. I think the community is great. And for some people who don't know, the Newport Aquatic Center is actually a not-for-profit facility. It is part of it's on city land, and we rent kayaks and stand-ups to the public, but we're also membership based. So people can sign up a month for a membership, and you have use to all the equipment, kayak stand-ups, rowing shells, outriggers, showers, the whole facility, the weight room that's there. So it's also, you can have a membership and sign up for a specific program, which you would pay the dues specifically for that program. Everywhere from masters rowing to dragon boat to recreational outrigger. We do have the men's and women's competitive teams. So basically every program is run under the umbrella of NAC. And then those programs themselves would, everything's allocated to the cost of what would be to those programs. So everyone's going to pitch in. The motor boats are all owned. The coaching boats are all owned by NAC. The high school rowing is the main thing of NAC. So they basically get priority over any equipment that's needed from specific hours. So the 3:30 to 5:30 after school kind of thing, all of the rowing motor boats for coaching are all for them. Outside of that, we could use that, or outside of their season, any of the other programs can sign up to use any of those kind of equipment, that helps. So for me, to get into some of these questions of how do you choose who's going to be in a lineup for practices and races and so forth, I'm more of a kind of just do things on the fly, and that's just my style. I kind of do things based on how I feel, how previous practices went, what I'd be working on a certain day, and I kind of just do that as I go, which I'm not to say I'm not organized, but that's just, I know that I operate best in that way. Where some other coaches, they have a teamer and they sign up people and have lineups before you even show up to the practice, and they do that. Personally, I like doing it on the fly, and there's always someone who's gonna be like, oh, I showed up late, and then you got to switch to every lineup anyway. So for me, like, screw it. I don't even want to, why put more time in earlier when I got to change it again anyway. So I think overall, one of the best things as a program is to teach people on the team and to always have a culture behind everything. Of it could be from many different aspects of, if you're an elite paddler, it doesn't mean that you're not going to ever be in a boat with new people. If you're a novice, you know, it doesn't mean you're not ever going to be in a boat with an elite paddler or something. And to have people in the mindset of, if you are elite, be happy that you have a novice in your boat so you can make them better. Maybe you do learn something from teaching them as well. Maybe that new person, you know, obviously will benefit from the elite person being there, but it's like, so kind of having a culture like that, where, and making sure people are open-minded, where it's like, you can't just have like the biggest ego and like what you say goes or whatever. Whatever the coach says, people should listen to it. And I teach my athletes to listen to even whatever I'm saying with an open mind, so that when they go on their own boat, they can practice things and learn from there. So for me in practices, I like to kind of end up designating seats to some people. You'll learn, obviously, some people are better at stroking. Usually you have X amount of steersmen. I think a big rule, or something that's good for any team, is basically every paddler should know how to sit one seat. Every paddler should know how to sit 6 seat. So everyone should know how to steer. Everyone should know how to stroke a boat. I mean, every seat itself has its own job, its own qualifications, essentially. You know, we always called 5 seat the couch, but it is pretty comfortable there. But they also should know how to steer, especially, right? Because in some conditions they'll be working, you know, as a partner, as the sous chef to the steersman, right? Your middle boat, you know, people call it the powerhouse, you know, or, you know, with the engine room. I really think, I mean, every paddler in the boat should be an engine, you know, they are in the end. But I think like whoever is a very good small boats paddler, like 4 seat, like to me, 4 seat, like the 6-man is your 1-man. Like you have the AMA next to you, like I don't know, you're right in the middle of it. Like you're the link between the front and the back. To me, like the 3 seat is your captain seat. I think it's a pretty tough seat to sit. I think 2 is probably the hardest seat to sit. So you want probably one of your best paddlers in 2 seat, who's also very good at stroking, because they are really the second stroker, right? So depending on the paddler's qualities, if they're mentally tough, if they're good at talking and commanding a boat too, then I usually would have them in like a 3 or something. But regardless of where you're sitting, people should be pretty quiet and listening. So if someone ever says, I can't hear you, speak louder. No, really just listen better. Because when you're in conditions and there's 25-mile-an-hour winds, no one can hear anything anyway. Like there are many times I don't even hear a change call, but if you're paying attention, you can see the mannerism of a paddler and know that they're going to change sides, and you don't even have to hear them. So there is a level when you do notice these tiny little things that, you know, you'll just get there, kind of thing. So the culture of the club, I think, is big. NEC historically has always been really a very small team. At our men's practices, we have maybe 2 boats, maybe 3. The women's team will have 4 or 5, probably. They're definitely not a 12+ boat kind of thing or anything. So we do have the resources. So having the coaching launches, the motor boats to follow along. I don't really use the TV too much, but we'll take video and we send it to the paddlers after every practice. You know, there are all those resources that most anyone could do. Me, when I first started, our coach was always in the canoe with us, and he had cystic fibrosis. So for when I started, he'd be steering a boat coughing his lungs up. And for me, it was motivation. Like I wanted to paddle so hard that I was having trouble breathing. So to me, that was just motivation for me. But I started in a style where the coach was in the canoe. I personally see great value in having the coach being on a motorboat and not in the canoe. You should have those team captains in your boat, running a boat and learning to command and feel the boat from within the canoe. Because as a coach on a motorboat, you can't feel what's happening in the boat. Those little tiny things when you notice, like if a boat just suddenly slowed down, to have people pick it up or whatever. Or if you're going to come in a certain canoe, like commanding a boat is big. And I encourage a lot of people, every paddler should at least try to run a boat at any time, because you learn a lot when you do. But really a coach in pretty much any sport, I kind of see it, they're just an outside set of eyes, you know. As a paddler, you don't know what you look like at all. So that outside set of eyes can tell you all the little things that they see that you won't at all. Of course, being a coach on a motorboat, you can't feel what's going on in the canoe. So that's the job of the paddlers, the team captains, the athletes themselves in whatever seat they're sitting in. So coming from NAC and having those resources, it's great. We're a small, you know, we don't have a lot of people on the team, but we're a good quality of team. And I try to always kind of keep that, like, of our different programs, we have recreational program and we have competitive programs. So to me, I grew up with 3 older brothers. I've always just been competitive. I don't understand when people aren't. So I try to instill all these things that I've learned over my years of growing up with, whether it was from growing up with my brothers or being in the crew team, and all the sports. I've just been an athlete my whole life. So to instill to me all the little rules that I follow, you know, and that's one of the things where if they learn that really early on, then, and they learn all those kind of rules, then they'll just be always applying it themselves. I don't have to like reiterate it too much to them, right? And then hopefully those athletes pass it on and keep that kind of amongst the club, that kind of becomes a part of the culture of the club. So now selecting team lineups for races. So to me, selecting lineups for races, one of the biggest things that Billy had taught me early on was keep like with like. So if you have those crazy competitive people, sure, put them all in a boat. If you have people who are I call them like coffee club, you know, they show up practices and they go get coffee afterwards. They're more of a social club kind of thing, put them all in the same boat. If someone's complaining about not making a first boat or not, to me, like, I always kind of try to teach my athletes, like, make it no question that you're in that boat. So you don't even have to question yourself why you're not in that boat, you know? So, and then of course that culture of, if you're an athlete and more on the elite side, I'm stoked to paddle in a second boat or a third boat or whatever. I'm stoked to do that for races. Now, like, I don't know, not everyone's like that. You know, they'll always want to be in that top boat. So just to understand the person, the kind of people who, like, I could tell a coach, yeah, put me in the second boat. I'm fine with it. Like, some people always want to be in the top boat or whatever. Like, just understand who they are as an athlete and keep like with like. So for me, boating races, now every race is completely different, because there's always a different lineup. You know, to me, you wish that you could have the commitment from everybody to make every single race. And if that were the case, you could put a small group of people together and have them practicing just them the whole year, all the time, like every single workout, even the cross training stuff, every little thing. And there's no, they'll all be there. And that kind of commitment is awesome. Like, coaches love that, because you have a commitment from the people. Not every club's going to be like that. You'll have people who literally only make 3 practices in the week, and they don't go do one man's at all any other day. So those people who are only putting in 3 days a week, they're probably going to be voted in a 6-man with people who are also paddling only 3 days a week, where the other paddlers who are doing 6 or 7 days, 7's kind of, you know, I mean, that means you have no other hobbies, right? But can I plug this in?
Yes.
Well, sorry. So, I mean, from the boats kind of stuff, like, I mean, I just do it depending on the race, whether I want to have one boat be highly competitive in that category, because there's so many categories in Outrigger. Obviously our priority, and I think most clubs' priority, depending on the people you have, like the main event always, right? So usually the open men and the open women. Some clubs really always boat towards the co-ed, and that's their main event as a club. So it depends on who you are, because in Newport Harbor alone, we have 4 different canoe clubs, 5 different canoe clubs, and some of them are known to be competitive. Some of them are known to be like kind of more of a family oriented team. Some are known to be like kind of a fun weekender kind of team. A lot of them want to be competitive, and a lot of people, no matter the team that you're on, always are looking to like improve and like do better. So I think I've never really gotten personally involved in like the paddle ticks, you know, where people jump from one club to another club to another club. To me, I don't mind if a paddler comes on my club and the next year they go to the neighboring club. Like if they go to then the one in the next city over or whatever, like, hey, they got a job that they're traveling, they're moving, they're do what's best for you, you know? To me, I've always been with the same club. I've never like thought to like leave and go with another one. You know, I've always worked obviously at the same place too, but I don't really get involved in too much of the like politic part of that. And I'm not going to be pissed off at a person if they jump clubs. Hey, they're doing what's best for them. If they're thinking that they're going to be more competitive in the other club than the club they're in, then hey, that's them. That's just who they are. So we keep like with like. If someone leaves my club for something like that, okay, cool. You know, I've only and people coming in, I'll ask that, hey, are you competitive? Are you here? Are you there? You try to find that right category for them. So you'll kind of notice when they first come into the club, because we do have a recreational program. We do have this one, you know, find the one that's best for them. You know, if they're paddling 2 times a week, they're in the recreational program. If you're doing 5 or 6 times a week, you're going to be more in the competitive program, right? Or they just a hobbyist otherwise, really, right? So you know, like who's who. So yeah. What are my other questions here? Let me quickly run down it and I'll finish my babble. Oh yeah, off season, preseason. I don't even know what an off season is. So
You live in California. You're walking warm all the time.
Yeah, I know. We do have the luxury of being on the water every day of the year, for sure. The springtime, fall time, springtime's the best wind wise. I mean, when you could have wind all year. We get beautiful days in the wintertime. I mean, as an NAC club, we have a 3-mile paddle to get to the ocean. So we got 3 miles harbor piece of flat water. So we get a lot of flat water training. So anytime there's a race and there's no wind, hey, I tell my team, this is our stuff here. This is your comfort zone, you know? This is where your confidence is. Like usually your team's gonna perform well like that. Lanakila, on the other hand, they're an ocean, pretty much strictly ocean paddling, right? Unless they willingly want to stay in a little 1/4-mile harbor. Like I wouldn't, there'd be nutso if they're just going back and forth in a 1/4-mile harbor, like go out in the fun stuff. But so yeah, usually it's expected that a team like that would do better in like conditions. So we always try to get in the ocean and get as much practice time in conditions as we can. But I'm not going to teach my team that not to be confident in those. They should be confident in those conditions. If you ain't confident, you're not going to win. So yeah, with regards to paddlers complaining or something about where they are, I mean, from me coaching men's teams and women's teams, that's like totally different. That's like a night and day. And each person is different themselves. We all have different personalities. Like I've, as a competitor, if a coach had told me that I sucked, which Johnny loves to do, to me, I'm the kind of person that's going to want to prove them wrong. I'm going to go work my ass off so they'll never have to question anything about me again. Anything. So if they tell me to correct something in my technique or whatever or something, I'm going to do as much as I can so they never have to tell me that again. And that's just me. And so I try to teach my team to have some of these qualities. There are some people, if you in any inkling tell them something negative about them, if they suck or whatever or something, they might be the kind of person that's going to go want to crawl into a corner and cry. So you got to really understand the people themselves for sure. If someone's, now each person is their own case, right? So if someone's complaining about it, then just try to put them on the right path to get what they're asking to achieve. I don't know. Hopefully they're not the kind of personality that just complains about everything. Then they're a lost cause. Then you tell them to go to the neighboring club. So
Okay, I see the strategy.
yeah, we'll send them to you, Joe.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
You got
mentioned
plenty of
that-
people anyway. You can put them with the other complainers in their own boat.
Sure. Yeah,
You'll
that
have an
sounds like
entire
a great
boat of just
idea.
them.
That
Yeah.
sounds like a great idea.
Um,
Is it my turn?
yeah, do you want to go? Does anyone have any questions at all on what I just
Oh,
ran through?
so many questions. I have questions for you.
All
I
right.
do too.
Do you want to do that now before we forget them, or do you want to write them down and then come back to them later?
Well, I think let's go to Jill, because I think this will be a culminating question for both of you, kind of, because
Okay.
I'm going to ask the same question to both of you, and Jill might touch on
Okay.
it first. So let's roll over to Jill and we'll go
Okay.
there.
So I am the women's coach for Lanakila. I've been coaching since 2001. Don't even do the math. It's a super long time. Okay. I came up with Alching and the whole caboodle. So right now, our club, like my women's team, I have about 150 women on the roster.
Jesus Christ.
So COVID was like awesome. We shut down, the 6-man. It was like we were in this little tiny thing. So, and now since then, it's like even crazier. So we're putting like 11, 12 boats on the water every practice. Okay. So we have a little different animal than Dave has working. And we have this club culture. So there are some clubs that, like I spoke with you guys earlier, you have a master's group that does their own thing and a juniors group that does their own thing and a golden masters, right? We are still embracing, like, we want this whole club culture. So we have the men and women separate, right? But I have juniors at my practice. I have women, masters, senior masters, golden masters. I have the whole thing. Why do we do that? Part of it is that culture of we're going to bring everybody up together, right? Like Dave was saying, every practice, you got to get something out of it. If you're, in a boat of rookies, then you're learning how to coach rookies. If you're in a boat of mid-pack people, then you're learning those nuances of how to lead that crew and be a leader, or learn about feel in the water. We really feel like there's a benefit to running this big group together. We're at the limits of it, but we still like the feeling of it. And part of our mission is that we are a performance-based team. Okay, so we say that at the get-go. We don't run a separate recreational program. And even if they say they're recreational, they don't mean it. Okay, like once they get going and have that energy of like, I can be faster or I can be more competitive, like no one wants to be on something called a recreational crew. Like, and maybe that's just how, because they feel the energy of people racing and going faster. So that's kind of like how our club is set up. So then when we get to races, I'm picking the top fastest people, and that's a crew. And the next second, that'll be a crew. And guess what? If you happen to be all the same age, then you get to be in a category. Now Now there's some nuances in there, right? Because I'm setting up 7 crews for a race. But generally speaking, I like to have a 1 and that 7th one, the 42nd one or whatever. Same with Dave. We like to have people all learn how to steer and all learn how to sit every seat. With this many people at a practice, you can't be specialized. So that's a benefit for running this big group, right? And actually in the beginning of the season, I make everybody steer every practice. We just rotate them in and out. Like, I don't care if you've never held a steering blade. This is going to be your opportunity. We get a little bit of pushback because yes, it's slow and it's painful sometimes, but the benefit for this kind of group is that we just have a lot of more flexibility when it comes to practices, right? People who get pigeonholed into a seat towards the end of the season now get sort of a reprieve. They get to learn about other seats in the boat. They get to learn those nuances of not being in 1, but maybe being in 4. And so then when they go back to 1, they have a different view of it, so I think it's a really good reflection for everybody. So we start mixed up and then we move to a more core groups and then we move to more of a team group by the time we're in the main racing season. I coach and I paddle. We don't have an outside coach. What we do is at certain points during the season is I'll call people in and get eyes on the boat. It is really hard not to have that look from the outside and get that feedback. But I'm actually not that good at it because I've always been an athlete in the boat. I'm better at reading the tails and signs in the boat than I am outside, but we have access to a lot of people. I got Danny, I got Josh, I've got, Rylan, I got people that I can call in and say, hey, can you come out, sit in a boat and take a look at our cruise? But generally speaking, I'm in the boats coaching. Because we have this giant numbers of boats, I do have an assistant coach that we get separated. I don't know what kind of boats you guys have, but we have spec boats and we have light boats in our practices. That's a whole nother level of management. So we end up with 2 groups. It'll just be that way. However, I set up practices. And so I have an assistant coach who's going to run the workout, really. So that we're not bogged down waiting on canoes, right? That's just like practice logistics. We do a sign up genius for practices. We started during COVID because we needed to know how many people were going to be there. We had a cutoff and I've kept it going. I used to just wing it too. I could wing it with 6 boats. I couldn't really wing it with 12. As far as just, I need to know if I have enough steersmen and what the practice is going to look like. Am I going to have towards the end of the season, am I going to have my top team together? Are they going to be here am I going to have a middle set? And I can tell by the layout, maybe what I will focus on. So if I have people that don't make every practice and they're still on my top team. We practice 3 times a week. And we typically have other one-man stuff in there. But I have a lot of people that can't make every practice, even at the elite level, they can't make every practice. So with the sign up, I'm not necessarily setting crews, but I am getting a look at who my players are for that day. And it gives me a little bit of a focus for the practice. The practice workouts are set. We have a program. I put the program out every month so people know what's coming up. We have time trial dates on there. We have, OC1 morning workouts on there. So we have a lot of stuff available for people to get their mileage in. But they also see what's coming up as far as team boat workouts. Selection for races. We use a few different metrics. We use time trials, seat utility and seat races. Okay. And it is, there's no one thing really that I pick from. I look at a sort of a combination of all those things, as well as just practice and performance and practice. I think it's important that people see their own metrics and know what's going on. Every time we do a seat race, we do get a little, like, some people don't do seat races. I get it. I understand why, but I need it because I have a lot of people I got to pick from. And I'd rather them, what I want to see is their peers knowing that they're with peers. Like Dave mentioned, like for like, I can tell them they're like for like, but sometimes they don't believe me. So sometimes it's good to see, like, okay, we do some time trials. Here's your people. These are your people. This is where you are. You can change that by going faster. That's cool. But right now, this is where you are. And this is where I need to see where you're going to play, right? Seat races just give me a little bit, for the people that maybe don't get on the one mans as much or aren't as skilled in the one man, seat races give them an opportunity to shine in a team vote environment. I do have a pretty good speech every year, though, about what I think about seat races and my expectations for seat races. It goes along the line of, I don't want to just paddle with my friends. I want to paddle with fast people. So if I get the sense that anybody is dogging it, it's not going to be, we're not going to like that. And you have to set that tone and have some buy-in and have some trust that, yeah, things can happen, all kinds of fun things happen in seat races. But over time, you're going to see a pattern. And unless something egregious has happened, this pattern will play out, and it's going to be obvious to your teammates and to your coach kind of what boat you're going to be in. There's always the exceptions. I don't know if that goes into politics, but I post the metrics, I post their time trials, I post all the seat races for everybody to see. I really look hard at my teams before I post them to see if those metrics are still making sense in there. They're not the end all. After a while, you get pretty good at choosing the teams just based on how the boat runs together, their time in the boat together, their seat utility. There's no like formula. A lot of it is trust. Your teammates are trusting the coach is trusting the teammates. And there's always that bubble person that could be in this crew and not that crew. And it's better to post the crews, or like I like to even let the bubble people know, look, this is where I think I'm going to put you. I just want to give you a heads up. And what I found is that it just gives them a little bit more of a sense of what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it. It used to be I would just throw the crews out there and just wait for the blowback. And so now either, I don't know, I'm wiser and older or something. I'm like, let me just have a chat with this person. And then they can know what I'm thinking, and I can get their perception, and I can give them the talk of like, look, this is the crew you're going to be in, and you need to fire up. You're bringing something to this crew that's important. So that's helped alleviate some of the problems with setting crews and finding out the last minute. What it does take is it takes me knowing people have to let me know if they're racing a lot earlier than they used to. It's not like when you have two crews, what every schedule is, that's been the hardest thing, is having people being committed to like, if you sign up for this race, then you're signing up no matter what crew you're in. This is our expectation. Part of that is it has some learning curve to that, to make sure that people abide by that. But I'm not sure what you mean by politics, because here in California, they don't really jump around crews like maybe in Hawaii. Like here, there's actually some rules. You can't just jump crews unless you mean like board versus coaches versus teams. I'm not quite sure what you mean by politics.
We'll let the
Do you-
audience take care of that question in a little bit.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Yeah.
In the meantime, we've got a question. So some crews and some clubs in Canada are familiar with what seat racing is. I've got a
Okay.
private message here going, what's the process of seat racing?
Okay, well, the
What
way
is
we
seat
do
racing?
it, yeah, so the way we do it is I'll set up the cruise. It's usually just 2 boats. We only do 2 boats at a time. Let's say we're gonna do a 6-minute seat race. 3, 2, 1, go. Everybody goes for 6 minutes. The first crew stops at 6 minutes and holds water, and the second crew paddles through. Okay, so we get a time, steersman to steersman. We switch 2 people, do the same thing again. Bang, bang. So they get 2 times, right? So the person with the least amount of time wins their seat race. We do it continually though. So I don't just do 1 seat race and power done. I do a seat race and I do another seat race and do another seat race. So people are doing their seat race, but it's also the first seat race for the next person. Hopefully that keeps people honest and going 100% each piece because they don't know who's next. Ultimately, you want people to be going 100% anyway, instead of trying to play, work the system, maybe go hard thinking I'm going to race next and then not go hard. You want to be there for your peers, your other athletes in the boat. So everybody gives it their go pretty good. And, you know, once you start dialing in the people that need to be seat raced, it's very close. Like it could go either way. And that's where you want to be, right? You want to make it hard for the coach to choose. But yeah, so everybody gets a time. They get a 6 minutes, maybe they get a 6:01. The other person gets 6 minutes and a 6:05. So the person with the least amount of time wins. And then we have more seat races going on. Yes, conditions are a factor. Whether you have a good steersman's a factor. The different strokers are a factor. Yeah, I get it. But that's the breaks. Like we need tools and we need metrics. It is one of the things that we look at. It is not the end all. But the flip side to it, it does give us some good intensity at practices every once in a while. People laugh because I walk up with the waterproof paper and they know what's coming and get all, you know, giddy up. But, you know, you want to be out there. You want to be pushing it a little bit, you know. So I try not to have people get too crazy with it, but we've had tears. We've had all kinds of things, you know, we work through that.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is that it's not the be all end all. A time trial is not the be all end all. The
Correct.
seat utility is not the be all end all. The seat race is not the be all end all. The being able to blend together is not the be all end all. It's that combination and that finding that balance.
And it gives people something to shoot for. It gives people, you know, metrics are important for some people to understand. We get a lot of people who haven't been in team sports before, which is sort of interesting because I played rugby, you know, we had tryouts and, you know, you had to go and make this regional team and do that. If you wanted to make the USA team, like, you know, I'm used to it, but some people aren't. So you just can't be fearful of it being tested. We even do fitness testing, which is super fun. And what I find that it does is it gives people respect for their peers that they may not have. We did this fitness test one time. And we had a beep test, which was a shuttle test. I don't know if you guys know the beep test. Who knows the beep test? Okay. So it's like a VO2 max test, but you're running this 20-meter shuttle to this beep. They get shorter and shorter. So the whole team did it. And of course, you know, the top team girls didn't finish at the top. It was these other girls. And it was just so interesting to see the switch in the respect for their teammates that they didn't have because of maybe they weren't that good of a paddler necessarily, but they're really good at this. And that still brings something to the table. And then we went to the pull-up bar and the people that could do pull-ups weren't necessarily on my top team at the time. And, you know, it was just such a good eye-opener for everybody. If they couldn't do pull-ups, this one person was like, I can't believe I can't do a pull-up. I'm all, why don't you know if you can't do a pull-up, you know? So it definitely gets people on this sort of like even playing field of our expectations, my expectations, and your you know, you have to have respect for your fellow paddlers, and this gained some respect. And it also gave people like, crap, I am not going to be in that top team unless I can do this many pull-ups and this many push-ups. That is obvious to me now, where maybe it wasn't obvious initially. So getting people to be in that like group was a struggle when you have this really big group of people. And so we use all these little metrics to get people on this, you know, a respectful playing field, respect the people that are fast and why, and see that it does play out. You know, these things do count.
Thanks for bringing that in. And for those out there that are watching, I myself, I could not do a pull-up until 2013.
Yeah.
So just for those of you that are like, oh, pull-ups, I could not do a pull-up for 2013. And for those of you that know me and what I did prior to 2013, I still couldn't do a pull-up. It wasn't until Comedy Jane taught me, you know, like the mechanics involved in it and the sequencing of how to do a pull-up that I started
And it gives people it gives people something to go for. Like if they say, what do I got to do to get the next team? I'll say, well, you got to do some pull-ups and you got to do some push-ups. Like, let's start with the basics. And you got to get on your one man and you got to get, you know, so now you can just go down this list of things that people want, that information. They want to know, what can I do to get better? I get that question all the time. We have OC1 workouts in the morning. Are you going to it? You know, come talk to me later after you've done that. And then, you know, you just build on that and then they see it. I have never met a person that has done additional workouts get slower. Like I'm just saying.
Absolutely. And so Dave, this kind of takes me back to the question that I had for you in terms of for the race selection side of things. So you're not working with having to go through, you know, 12 crews of people to select people. Was it any different for you working with, you know, 2 or 3 boats worth of people? Because you're saying, you know, make it clear to me as the coach that you belong in this crew. Did you have to go through the seat racing type of things for the crews you were working with as well?
Yeah, I mean, seat racing to me should be like an every practice kind of thing. Like you should always kind of be doing that because you're constantly getting that information throughout the entire year. So which people can change. So if some people aren't putting work in through a year, they're not going to progress. Maybe someone else is working their butt off, and you can see the progression throughout the year. So the seat racing should be kind of always happening with having like 2 boats. Actually, for the races in our association, I pretty much boat the boats on like Friday, which is the day before the race, because it's crazy how people will drop out the day before or 2 days before, and then you just reshuffle the entire puzzle. Which for me, it's a smaller puzzle, but it's still a puzzle. And when you have a men's and women's, and then you're doing co-ed boats also, that's what makes that whole thing a crazy puzzle. So with like 2 boats, the kind of quality of like the paddler, like if someone is good at sitting a certain seat, and I've already filled X seats in the top boat, okay, then the next best one of the next seat's gonna probably get put there. If maybe I do have like an kind of up and coming, you know, more novice or newer to the club who's been putting a lot of work in, who's showing a lot of promise, maybe in that race, our goal is to give them more experience. And so maybe we'll take someone who really essentially is like a second tier and put them in the first boat just to give them that experience for later on in the season. We've actually as well sometimes would like work with like Danny and be like, hey, are you boating like all your fast guys in this race? Yes, he is. Okay, then we'll boat all our fast guys. Hey, are you doing whatever? So that we're keeping competition as well. So like if he's putting together a team where he's trying to pull up a couple second or third stringers into the top boat to give them the experience, then I'll do the same. So we're at least competitive, where instead of me just boating all my hot shots and he doesn't, and then we'll win. Likely it's understanding you would, or the vice versa, where he's voting all his top guys and I'm not. So we'll kind of also do that, where even like throughout a season of practicing, because like Josh or Ross, who's had lived in Costa Mesa for a long time too, like we'd have a lot of guys from Lanakila club that we would train with, or we would train with guys from Imua or whatever, or all kinds of other clubs. And my philosophy in this is that we're working together. We're making them better. They're making us better because they teach things differently. They're a different coach who says things differently and describes things in a different way that I can learn from. I'm also like that they could learn from, that whatever. So they're making us better. We're making them better. In turn, makes you better, right? Because if they're faster, it's going to make me faster, right? Because I'm competitive. I want to win. So as a bigger picture, it would make our entire association faster, our entire more Southern Californian contingent faster, which hopefully, if then we're making that to go towards our next area and the next region and the next region, which hopefully would make the entire United States faster, which hopefully us working with Canadians would make you faster. That makes us faster. That, you know, it's like that same sort of philosophy. Because I mean, I have Vaiki Nui on the TV right now where, okay, from my very first Molokai Hoi, I was in a boat of all elite level athletes, whether they were an elite rower who was an elite anything of all kinds of sports, everyone's background, and all these guys who were really good paddlers. And we were like basically an all-star team that was put together. So all these people who had made this boat to do this race, and we ended up 8th place. The first place was a half hour ahead of us. So I did the math on the timing difference over the race, and they were 10% faster. Now I was thinking 10% faster. How is that? They're that much faster than a group of people. Like, a couple of factors is we got a lot to learn, right? there's a lot of factors involved, obviously, right? And from me in the sport, like, I don't really see it as a sport of people who are trying to like cheat to win kind of thing. Like, where's the incentive in that? We all do it because we love it. We all pay our way to go do these races, you know, like, to me, it's not like that. It's a community oriented sport. You're hanging out, having a good time with the people of the other team at the end of the day, you know, like, maybe you might have 1 or 2 people on a team or something that might cheat or something like that. To me, I'm like, dude, I don't even wear a watch in my stuff. Like, I'm not using the simplest of tools in the first place. But to me, that's to me, that's a like, I want to see every other region and place and country and whatever to try to give Tahiti a run for their money, and specifically in a sport of outrigger or paddling, because paddling's paddling, right? I think it'd be great. You know, so hopefully we can all get there, because if we get there, then the next person adjacent to us or whoever's following and looking, like, man, they did that, we can too. So to me, that's how I see the entire perspective. So back to the initial question, like choosing someone who's going to sit in a seat, how Jill was saying, like, she would talk to the bubble people, because every person is different. It's best to, okay, ask them, what kind of work have you been putting in? Okay, this is what kind of work because we don't see the outside work. Maybe they're doing push-ups or circuit training at home, or they live near the beach and they're doing beach runs X amount of times a day. And along with the beach runs, are jumping into doing a swimming, running, or whatever. Everyone has a different kind of thing that the coach may not fully know about. So learn about that athlete to know how to make them better, to kind of steer them in the right direction, to get to that place where they're trying to get. And if they're really trying to, you know, they'll let you know. They'll ask. Hopefully, sometimes they might come to you in tears in that way. You know, calm them down first and just get them in the right direction, really. But yeah, kind of just there are a lot of factors. You can run time trials. Some people are better one-man paddlers than they are six-man paddlers. Another quality of a paddler is, can they blend, right? Some paddlers are just a solo kind of person. They got no boat feel and they don't know how to blend. That's just part. So let them know, talk to them, discuss them, try to find a way to get them to get better at that quality, right? Make sure their focus is there in practices to get, because if they're not thinking about it, they're not going to get better at it. They got to actively be working at it to get better at it. So steer them in that kind of a right direction. So yeah, boating the lineups, it's tough to say. You just kind of look at all the people and, okay, this is what I think's best for this race. This is what I think's best for this race. Ideally, say, you know, I know Lanakila guys have always looked at Catalina, and there's always a training program for Catalina. You know, the other races up to it may be a training. To me, they're quizzes, right? Catalina is your test. So it depends on your club. If our club, Catalina is the peak test that we're going for, maybe Hawaii Nui is the peak test that we're going for. Catalina is a quiz for that, you know? So it's all, it's always different every year, because we may have a group of guys who we're coming every day together all the time. You may just have your regulars who are just, they come every single year to only those 3 times a week scheduled practices. And if year after year after year, they know what boats they're going to end up getting in. So yeah, just kind of look and see what you got at the time and make the right decision, which could sometimes be the wrong decision, and you learn from those wrong decisions. You know, it's just how life is.
And that's the life of a coach, right? It's like we've
Oh my
done this
God, you're
so many
killing
different
me.
iterations.
I did see a question about how often we do time trials. In the beginning of the season is when we kind of do a lot of time trials, because people are getting back in. We do it about every 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, depending on what sort of holidays and stuff come in there. But we want to get people in the water, and we actually do different kinds of time trials. Like we'll start off with a 1 lap, and then we'll do a 2 lap, and then we'll do one with bungees. We'll do one at tempo. Like we do all kinds of fun time trials. And then during the season, we start just doing open water time trials. And that's less of time trial and more of like team getting out there in the rough water and doing it together. Even though it's on a 1-man, it's still just that little extra commitment. And that's when the rookies are coming into play, so that we've got a whole nother thing of that going on too. So it gives them an opportunity to show their skill set and see if they can be in the vet boats at that time. But Dave is right. We do have our program is geared towards state champs, which is our Ironman state champs race. It's the end of June. It's the last Ironman season. That's sort of our mid peak. And then we peak again for Catalina, which is at the end of September. And so our program is, you know, our races, we typically are trying out people on these lead up races, with state champs being we're playing all our cards at state champs. And then we change gears for 9-man, getting ready for Catalina. And then we play all our cards. I mean, we only have 2 races in between then, but that's also how our program is written, same as the guys.
So one of the questions we have here from Fabio is, for those of us that, you know, you guys do you have the small boat series there in SoCal for the winter series. What about those of us that, you know, do you recommend that your paddlers take some time off the water at all during the year? Or do you change any kind of the volume? Like some of us, we're landlocked or ice locked during the winter. So like, I know what I, as a coach, recommend to some of my paddlers to get a break from paddling, mostly because it's bloody freaking cold. But yeah. What about for you folks? Is there any kind of like downtime between your seasons? Like Catalina was a couple months ago. Have people taken a bit of a break now, kind of leading up? Like off the couch was just a couple, like last weekend kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of ease into it. I feel like there's a little break after Catalina. There are some still off-season races that didn't really happen. Like we haven't had Molokai for a few years, right? We had some guys go to Hawaii Nui. There's a few races, but nothing's like, unless you're doing a postseason race, you kind of take a break until now. And even the 1-man series, you know, we're kind of easing into it. People are training for something like a May OC1 race, like the solos and the relays in Hawaii. So that it starts a different kind of training program back up again. And it's now an OC1, which to me is different type of training. I know it seems the same, but it is a different load. And you kind of go back into it again. Okay, some more base training on the OC1 and then some speed training, and you're going into that mode again. But we don't take a ton of time off. You know, it is a great time to get back in the weight room, maybe hit that a little heavier, get some, you know, fix some things, get some strength built. Unless you're doing a pretty heavy OC1 circuit, then you have to manage that a little bit differently. And as we go into Outrigger again, we start in March. There's we have a base training, like a, you know, we kind of try to ease into it. And we do talk a lot about, you know, injury prevention and all that stuff. Because if you go flat out the whole time, at some point, you're going to find injury. So we try to have those deload type of weeks, even within our training schedule. And we call it a deload. The mileage goes down. We don't maybe have an OC1 workout that week, you know, we definitely deload and then reload. There's a lot of deloading and reloading going on. Okay. But that's still better than going full bore the whole time or taking so much time off that it's hard to come back. I don't know what you guys do in the winter. I don't know what, I have no answer to you.
Cross country skiing,
Earth?
snowshoeing.
Yeah. Like that.
Cool.
So yeah, that like off season, I had said before, like I don't even know what, I've never heard, you know, there's no off season. You don't ever
It's just a
stop.
deload.
Like, yeah, if you paddle, you paddle. You can always paddle. It's the thing. It's what you do, you know. Yeah, we're lucky to be on the water every day all year, for the most part. And in the more off season time, when you're have a big period between that big race that you're looking for, in that off series and off time, you're just doing more cross training stuff. You're putting more of your work in the cross training activities. You're not really doing like that high intensity in the canoe itself. When you're getting towards more closer and closer, as you work towards that race, that thing, you're taking the intensity away from your cross training stuff and putting that intensity into the boat. So that is more really what an off season would look like. But we're fortunate that we could still get on the water 6 days a week if we wanted to. So in the off season time, maybe you'll take 5 days for if you're doing, depending on how many double days you're doing, or what you are doing, you're doing more on the land stuff. I like cross country skiing, I'm sure is a great cross training activity for paddling. My favorite cross training activities would be like Pilates, rock climbing, yoga, and some people kind of, you know, to me, those are just great cross training activities. Now, depending on what you're training like, so like say you're a sprinter, you love heavy breathing, right? So whatever your cross training is, if your body is, it basically gets acclimated to what you're doing. So if you're sprinting all the time, you're breathing like crazy. When you get in a canoe, you're gonna look for that similar feeling, because that's it's a part of your comfort zone. It's what you do all the time. It's what your body knows. It's what it's looking for. If you're the kind of person who doesn't do any like heavy breathing stuff in your cross training, you're not really doing a lot of heavy breathing when you get in a canoe. So you have to really understand your own body and your training program and whatever. Like, yeah, one man's have a lighter load than a 6-man would, especially a 400-pound boat versus a light boat versus a whatever. To me, I always have this saying of good training. Oh, I got weed on my rudder. All right, cool. It's good training. You know, so if you're going every practice, you're putting weight in your boat. Great, that's good training. And people are going to complain, oh, my boat's really heavy. Cool. You don't ever have to actually add the weight to it. It's just heavy always. So like for me, I mean, when we would run time trials, speaking of time trials, we would weekly do 2Ks. And some weeks we might do 3, some weeks we might do 5. You know, who likes those weeks? I do. I think it's fun. It hurts like hell, but it's fun. And some of those 2Ks, I wouldn't go in a really nice boat. I'd go in like a club boat, where the boat itself is like 30 pounds versus someone else who has a 17-pound boat. Well, on the 5 times week, the fourth one, or maybe partway through the third one, I might start to kind of teeter out, you know? The fourth one, I'm kind of pooping out quicker than I would have otherwise, being in a lighter boat or so forth. I kind of get fatigued towards the end of the practice more because I do have more weight, more load entirely over all that mileage. I'm doing a lot more work essentially, right? So whatever. If I got a heavy boat, I got a heavy boat. I don't care. It's good training, So throughout the year, I don't know, just get the people to look for that, to want to do that work. And if you got a lot of people in your club that are adding weight to the boat, they'd be like, man, how come I don't have any? Or if it's a bungee day,
Bungee
two
day,
different types, depending on your workout and what you're specifically looking for. So those are for two specifically different things. But hey, whatever. That's just how life is in that way.
Like we've kind of digressed a little bit from our original seat selection thing, but I wanted to reflect back to what you were saying, Dave, about, you've got some training groups down there of how you have multiple clubs down there in Newport Harbor, just like in San Diego on Mission Bay, they've got multiple clubs there. It's just like, I often say, together we get better. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this CORA Off the Water series. And I'm so grateful to you folks coming online today. And we've got people tuning in from all over. And I know there's people that tune in to the YouTube channel as well from all over, is that we've made this free instead of a subscribing thing because we want to share. And guest speakers like you folks, we can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your expertise, sharing your experience, because we're firm believers at CORA as well, is that together we all get better. Like, as you were saying, like Havaki Nui just finished, and if you folks haven't gone online, the live streaming was on YouTube. Google it and watch it, because the conditions from day one were just, like Dave showing you the TV right now. The conditions for day one were just so cool to see. And then like the glassy, blue sky, beautiful water stuff from day 2 and 3. But the performance from the boys from Kahului Kai on day 1 just goes to show like what is possible, what things, how far some people from the mainland in Hawaii, like that, the possibility to compete with the Tahitians, it's coming, right? Yeah. So like the more we share, the more we collaborate, the more we grow together. It's just showing us what we can do when we all do work together.
Correct.
And grow and that kind of stuff. So opening it up to the floor, are there questions? Like I said, we kind of got a little off topic from the seat selection and crew selection side of things. Like I said, it's through our conversation so far, there's not a clear cut and dried way to do this. So much of it is watching and seeing from the outside, feeling from the inside, taking those, metrics from time trials and seat races and knowing, watching how people blend, seeing their abilities and skills in different seats, and taking all that information and kind of collaborating it together. But what about for you folks that are here live on the call? Is there anyone else that has questions about this? Have you been in experiences that you might have questions about, or are you things that as reflect on the season or thinking ahead to next season in terms of your clubs that you're helping to run or clubs that you're part of, that you have questions of? Like, let's open it up to the floor. What do you guys have questions of?
I have a question, if I may.
So Fabio, let us know where you're from.
Oh, Fabio from Brazil / Calgary, or Calgary / Brazil. It's actually something that I'm fascinated by with my profession and with my research studies and all that. Like, I'm really interested in the concept of fairness. And this is one of the key things that actually come up when selecting crews and all that. And, it's fascinating to see decisions made based on data, based on facts. And, one of the things that usually come up that I find extremely hard for the coaches selecting a team is relying on a single event, on a single time trial, that if you think about, it's key because it is a fair process. It is declared beforehand. It is on the same conditions. It is a race off. But on the other hand, it competes with the other interest of perhaps an athlete was not doing really well that day. Speaking from my example was, had COVID. And so how to reconcile that and how to perhaps gather more data throughout the year? How does that, is there a formula to make it better?
No, there's no formula. I mean, you know, we try not to base our, I rarely have like a seat race for a seat, for a crew, for the race. Like I have data that I've done beforehand. I really hate to say, okay, well, I'm going to seat race for this one seat in this one crew today for this race tomorrow. It's just, that to me isn't necessarily fair. The race is 2 days away, like, you know, and then it puts this extra stress in the whole situation. I like to just keep data kind of coming in, and you're getting a picture of how the boats are working together. You're getting a picture of how the athletes are performing. It's not just based on one thing. And there is not a formula that I have found.
Yeah, for us running the 2Ks weekly, in my own crew, for the most part, like any 2K, Will could win it. Any 2K, Brent could win it. Any 2K, I could win it. Any of those 2Ks, Micah could win it. But when you do it week after week after week after week, and you're doing 3 of them or 4 of them or 5 of them each practice, each time, so it's not just one on that day or whatever, we're doing 5 over, Will would be the most consistent of all of them. So to me, in being in a high level of anything, consistency is a huge thing. It's not that, I mean, sure, anyone could go real fast on one of them, but then they're going to be nothing on the next 3 or the next 4 or the next 2. Like the consistency speaks pretty loudly. So that can help make a decision of these time trials as one of the metrics for all of the decisions, and you get it constantly throughout the entire year. Yeah, you can't base it off of just one. Yeah, we all can have one really good day and have, you know, you could, I don't know who has the record on the, you know, yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah. And I like, so part of the, like, one of the things that we're going through up in Canada right now, and I don't know if USA Orca is already having these conversations. I haven't gotten any email yet from them asking, you know, for see if they can copy our protocol again or not, from CORA, but is being at such a big country and doing selections for things like world sprints and world distance is a challenge, right? Because people are coming from all over and having to do, how do you do trials for, in this situation of world distance, is one team per age category, right? Per gender. So it's like the ideal is doing something like you guys are saying, where we have consistent data over a long period of time. So I'm not going to ask you for what your ideal situation is, because we already know the ideal is to have that consistent data over a long period of time in ideal conditions from all different people being on the same level playing field, blah, blah, blah. We know that. So this is one of the things that, you know, one of the challenges that we have in Canada is that it's hard to do that when you've got some people that have access to water all year round, when ideally doing selections, you know, in the beginning part of the year for a race that's in August, is getting that data in the beginning part of the year, where some people are in ice and can't get on the water, whereas other people do have access to water, but it's miserable because it's cold and wet and rainy and cold. So it's those challenges of going, okay, well, how do we do this, and trying different things. And every year here in Canada, we're learning cycle after cycle as we get feedback from our paddlers, and go through this. And I know USA Orca is going through similar growing pains as we figure this out.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're, I feel like you guys are a little bit ahead of the game setting up your selection protocols. Because this is the first year that we are opening it up to all of USA. Because last world distance, we just went as Pacific, right? So it was just Scora and Poca. So now we're tasked with opening it up to everybody, and we don't even compete against Florida and Virginia and Texas. Like, I mean, our clubs don't compete against them. So it's not like we have this association where everybody comes and does these regional races necessarily, unless they're coming here. So it's a tricky one. Plus, you know, iron is that one thing where blending is so important. You can pull in some players for a core group that's legit, just like Habaki Nui did, right? They have a core group, they pulled in some players. It'll be a challenge. I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, exactly. And if we go back to Havaki Nui, it was like, you're looking at, you said the core players of that group, and then you look at who they brought in. So again, so for viewers on the call, if you don't know who Kahului Kai is, they're a club, or they're a group of paddlers on Oahu. They're a club there, and they've been growing. Right now, I think they're being coached by Ryland Hart, who is
From Lanakila.
red Lanakila paddler, kind of thing. And then so this year they're doing Havaki, they did Havaki Nui, and they pulled in Danny Ching, they pulled in Tapuria King, who's paddled with them a few times.
Paddled with them before, yeah.
Yeah, I think they pulled in Casey from New Zealand as well. So they pulled in a couple of guys, and it goes to show that, you know what, just because they've got that core group, but they've got these guys that, you know, have jumped in the boat here and there. Danny and Ryland have, well, Danny helped build Ryland.
Right.
They've paddled together forever. And so it's coming back to that culture piece from your clubs, is like, when we're selecting crews, and this is one of the questions that I have, is when you're selecting crews, is like, at any point in time, is it ever okay to bring in someone from outside your club?
There can be, and that's probably one of the number one times you would ever have any of the drama part, when you have someone who's been in your own club and working their butt off all year, and then all of a sudden a big race comes or whatever, and then you pull in a hot shot from some other region, right? And then they may be like, who the hell is this person, you know? Where, yeah, that to me, there's your fairness question, right? I always would lean towards, you know, I'd rather, you know, stick with the people amongst your own club who have been there every practice all year, unless sure the other person that you're pulling in has previously been a part of your club for a long time. They just happen to move somewhere else, and they still train their butt off somewhere else or whatnot. And then hopefully that person that they basically be taking the seat from, you know, there's that old movie, the Steve Zissou movie. He goes, how come I'm on the B squad? He goes, hey, you may be on the B squad, but you're the B squad leader. So hopefully that person's okay with being the B squad leader. But
and that conversation,
it's just a hard decision to make,
time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The day before.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
you know, we've dealt with that a few times, and it is tough.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a reason. There has to be a plan and a purpose, and it has to be done intentionally, not just because some hotshot comes into town and they get a seat in the top crew. That'll never go over well in the club setting. But if it's something that is, maybe it's something that is going to benefit this top crew for some reason, whether it's a steersman or whether it's some international player that's going to help elevate, but it's still going to have to be a pill to swallow for sure. If you have a club setup, you know, if you're saying this is going to be a phone call race, we do those. We do, you know, those are usually postseason, you know, they're not like the part of the club.
for travel races, yeah.
Right, for travel races. But Danny has tried it a few times, and it's not always worked out great for the club. There's been a lot of, but, you know, I think it could have been handled, you know, maybe set up a little bit better. But I think it's settled, you know, it's never pretty.
Well, if you look at these Tahitian teams, you know, you got Kahului Kai, who's competing right now, and Hawaii Nui did, right, where they are a throw together team. They've got people from everywhere. They haven't paddled together at all. Maybe 3 practices before there, or whatever, a week beforehand. And I've been a part of all these kind of teams and stuff.
Yeah.
But having worked with some friends on teams there and stuff, like if you even just look at Shell, okay, then you go to Te Aito, how many other paddlers are in the top 10 of Te Aito? How many paddlers are in the top 50 or whatever? They got guys who are down the list in that boat who wins every 6-man race all the time. So there is it's, you know, you can't just pull in the best. You can't take the top 6 paddlers into the Te Aito and put them in a boat and then they're going to be the first place. It just doesn't work like that. So, most of these teams here are a collection of guys, and that's where you get that beauty of a team, right? Where each person has a quality that somehow benefits the crew, the boat, and there you go. You can see magic happen. That's the beauty of the team.
Yeah. And that's sometimes stuff that is difficult from a coach's perspective to put numbers on sometimes. Is like sometimes it's that leadership in the boat. Sometimes it's that person that can feel those bumps and just be able to bring people along with them. In terms of like if you have that seat one that just, can see and feel everything and they just bring it up, like there's no calls needed. The boat's just able to follow them naturally.
Oh yeah.
Those kind of things, right?
I mean, when we had a magic core group of people, there was me, there was Brent, there was Will, there's Micah, we had Jimmy and Val, like we were all within our mid to early 30s or whatever. We all had made a commitment. We all were putting the time in, and we all were extremely interested. And that's one of the biggest things, is like to be interested. So if someone asks you to if they want to get better or whatever, tell them, find some more interest. Because we were all like watching videos before and fall asleep with your phone on your face kind of thing, because you're watching paddling videos. It's like we were that interested. We were that like geared towards it. And sometimes you get that kind of really cool group of people like that, and it's real fun. It's great, and hopefully everyone can experience stuff like that.
And it makes it easy to train hard and want to get out there when that weather's not very great, because you're going out there for everybody else.
People are relying on you. Also,
Yeah.
And when everyone's on the same training program, you all feel the same all the time. When you hit that hard part of your training program, guaranteed you're not the only one waking up being like, damn, I got to go to practice, or you waking up with aches and pains or whatever. Everyone feels the same way. So that when you do show up on race day, you all feel the same way. When someone's hurting, hey, I am too. So it's just kind of how it is. It's like, I mean, a little example, when we did Hawaii Nui in 2015 or 16 or something, like I literally had a blister that like went most of the entire size of my hand. I had three that ended up connecting and merging into one big one that ended up popping on day 2. So after day 2, I had this huge thing that had torn open, and I'm still paddling day 3, which is the longest one. It's 60K. And, I'm sitting in 2-seat, and I'm going, and it's like when Will is sitting in 5-seat and I lend out a war cry, cause I'm paddling my ass off to catch this big wave. And he sees that I'm, with this giant blister on my hand, it's motivation for him too. Like, I'm not the only one that's hurting. I know he's hurting too. I know other guys got blisters or their ass hurts or whatever, something. Who knows? There's always some kind of chafing. There's something going on. Don't let it affect your race. Just go do your thing. And when I did the world distance in Australia, Josh was there. Josh is listed to do the Masters race, right? And we come up to the open race, and we were kind of like, we didn't have like a full program thing, this or that, or pull this guy to that guy. We even had Ethan was there, and we put him on our roster. And we go to check in, we're clearing our badges, going through check-in, and they tell him it came up red. It came up red. We're like, why'd it come up red? Well, he was too young. And we all questioned it, because we're like, wait a minute, he's a junior. He could race in the junior event. He's not too young for a junior event. Why would he be too young for an open event? It's essentially more safe for him. But yeah, he was too young to do it, so he couldn't race. And so our crew got, like, what are we gonna do? Okay, and then, hey, who's steering? Hey, Josh, you want to do that? I go, yeah. And people are like, whoa, dude, you just raced, man. And he said, hey, I'm a paddler. I paddle. It's what I do. And I've had people asking me the same question, like, hey, man, how'd you get so good at it? And personally, I'm like, I got a lot to learn. I don't think I'm that good at this. But, my response would be like, it's what I do. This is what I do. I do it in the morning. I do it in the afternoon. I work on the things. I live it. This is my life, And so that's it. Find the interest, and you'll be willing to put a commitment in. You'll be willing to make it a priority to not go do other hobbies. Maybe you do have a family. You might have to take time away from that to go pursue that. It's like that balance, work-life balance, family life, work, hobby, you know, it's you gotta know if you're making that commitment that year or not. You know?
I do think that actually having something to go together with is important. We have a lot of people who can't paddle 5 or 6 days a week. And they still paddle at an elite level. They make efficient choices. And we make sure that the times that we are paddling, we're paddling together. And it can be done. It takes a little extra work. And it's kind of funny because the guys team tends to like be able to go whenever, and then the girls team has to manage like all the kids and the babies and this and that. And so our times are like totally different times. But it makes it even that much more like, I don't know, like you get it done. And then we're still being able to compete at this high level. We went to Olamau and we won one of those days as our club. And it was the second Olamau, but it was amazing, and we did it together. We did it with a focused mission. So sometimes having that focus will just bring everybody to this point, and having that common goal, and it makes people work hard, and that's what you want. So.
And I think, Jill, that ties it all up nicely, is that mission, that common mission, that common goal, that common focus, is that no matter how short we are on time together, that when we're together, we're together.
Yeah,
right? It's like
intentional.
if you've got that 3 times a week, you've got that 5 times a week, or if you only can make those 2 times a week because your job takes over everything else, or your family commitments, is that when you're there, you're 100% there. It's like you show up to the club, you're there, you're 100% there, you're all in, and then you do your job, you do what's needed when you're there on the water, and then it's okay, then it's back to life. And that's how we can get the most out of our paddlers. The paddlers can get the most out of themselves when they're short on time, when we're there.
Correct.
And then I hate to say this, but we're at 5:28.
Crap. Good. I gotta pee.
So I just want to say thank you so much, Dave and Jill, for joining us today. Like,
Sure.
come back anytime.
Great.
We'd love to have you. Like, you both have such a wealth of experience and knowledge. We'd love to have you back on any topic. If you have any ideas for topics that you want to talk about or bring up, like, by all means,
I don't know.
come back anytime.
So many questions.
Ron,
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Are there any announcements we need to make for CORA?
Just that we've got a special town hall video conference in 1 week today, and that's to honor the CORA Hall of Fame inductees for 2022. So hopefully a lot of you will be able to join us here next week. Same time, different link. But thanks very much, Jill. Thanks very much, Dave, for joining us.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you guys so much. It was really great talking to you. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Those of you still on the meeting, this recording will be available tomorrow for you and your friends to watch it. So thank you, everyone, for participating. And Leanne, thanks for facilitating, and enjoy your Saturday evening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now.